One of my favorite types of photos to take is panning shots of a moving subject. Doesn't matter if I'm at Bikes and Breakfast, my in-laws' backyard, or out on the streets. I always find myself trying to freeze a moving subject with lateral motion blur in the background. What better place to try and practice this type of photography than a motorcycle track day? If it wasn't obvious from my writing, I haven't been to a track day in a long time, about 10 years. But when I did, this is where I came to ride, Summit Point Motorsports Park in West Virginia. I even rode with the same organization running today's event, N2 Track Days. Now, N2 has professional photographers covering this event, and of course, making a living selling the photos they take there. I'm not doing this for money, but I still wanted to make sure that me showing up and shooting for fun wasn't going to break any rules or make anyone think I was trying to step on their toes. I couldn't find any mention of photography in Summit Point's or N2's rule books, and I even reached out to Summit Point, N2 Track Days, and even the photography company they hire for this event, just to make sure that what I was doing was okay, but nobody replied to me. I took that to mean that I was in the clear, and fortunately, no one came up and questioned me while I was there. The official shooters had access to all sorts of juicy vantage points, but I'd be doing my work from the spectator areas. On stills duty today is the Sony a6700 with my old, basic, beat up but still trusty 55 to 210mm kit lens. This is like baby's first telephoto zoom, but darn it, the thing has just been so good to me over all these years. Let's get snapping. For the first few shots, I used a relatively fast shutter speed, freezing the action. I'd never shot subjects moving this fast, this far away before, and doing it handheld meant it was tough to keep everything sharp, even at a 500th of a second. But things were about to get tougher. Much tougher. In order to achieve that type of speedy panning shot with lateral motion blur, I started slowing my shutter speed down. This is not easy. You may recall a video I did a while back where I was fishing for panning shots at Bikes and Breakfast. The shots I was happiest with that day were between 1/60th and 125th of a second. Wanting my track day shots to be extra whooshy with lots of motion blur, I decided to commit to 1/60th. For subjects passing me at 70 miles an hour, 50 meters away, with a 300mm equivalent lens, handheld. Yeah, there were gonna be some misses. But every once in a while, in one of those long strings of continuous shooting from the a6700, there'd be a hit. For this sort of shot to come out right with a slow shutter speed, you have to track the panning motion of your subject perfectly. Think about it, if the frame is still and the subject passes through it, you get a sharp environment and a smeared subject. If the frame pans with the subject, you get a sharp subject and a smeared environment. A 60th of a second is a long time for the shutter to be open when you're trying to stay locked onto a sport bike accelerating out of a corner. If your panning speed is off by just a little bit, or if some vertical motion is introduced, you get a blurry bike. Some of these blurry ones I think actually kind of work, and I'm sure I could capture some cool stuff by using that as an intentional effect. But my favorite shots of the day were these, which all had sharp bikes. When it comes to editing, look, I had 400 photos to sift through for this video, so I just hit auto settings in Lightroom. Sue me. And I made small tweaks on shots where it looked like the exposure or shadow sliders had been bumped up a little too high. This is generally how I process large volumes of photo coverage for things like corporate events, although I do still pick out a few of my favorites and give them a little extra attention. The thing I'd definitely like to do differently in the future is use a polarizer to try and cut down on the glare from the track itself. The tarmac looked much darker in real life than it does in my photos. I'd also try to start shooting earlier in the day, as the direct overhead angle of the sun wasn't doing me any favors. It was almost time for me to leave, but there was one more thing I wanted to try while I was there. You know me, if something's worth shooting, it's worth shooting on film. This is my Nikon F4S, 1988's most advanced professional SLR. I adore this camera. At one point, I stupidly sold it and regretted it and bought another one almost immediately. I loaded up some Ektar 100, set the F4S to shutter priority with the shutter at 1/60th, and went to work. This camera's primitive autofocus wasn't going to be of much help here, so I left it in manual. My strategy was to pre-focus on certain points on the track and release the shutter right when my subject passed that point. Man, as if doing this on the A6700 wasn't humbling enough. Again, we are trying to stay locked on to fast-moving subjects, handheld at 300 millimeters. The F4S does have a burst mode of 6 frames per second, which wasn't good for much except helping me miss faster. I was better off sticking to single shooting. I decided to call it quits when the riders started pitting at the end of this session. But before that, I did manage to capture 2 film photos that I'm really proud of. This is what I came here for. A sharp subject that feels like it's zooming 100 miles an hour. I like that I caught the bike slightly obscured by the grass in the foreground, giving the shot a little more depth. The fact that it also has that character you can only get by going through the trouble of shooting on film is icing on the cake. So, that's my first time photographing motorsports on a track. I have a huge amount of respect for the team that has to produce quality shots of every single rider at every single track day. I had my hands full just getting a couple of keepers. But I'm happy with what I got. and I look forward to the opportunity to apply some of the lessons I learned. If any of you have ever shot motorsports on a track before, leave any tips you have in the comments below. Until next time, you all ride safe, and thanks for watching.